From the Blue Ridge Mountains to the Chesapeake Bay, Virginia is a mecca for outdoor travel and adventure. Virginia Outdoor Adventures podcast is the ultimate guide for local outdoor recreation, including hiking, camping, kayaking, and so much more. Get the information and the inspiration to plan your own adventure right here in Virginia. I'm your host, Jessica Bowser. The wandering waters of Virginia connect communities and people across landscapes and through time. From mountains, streams, and lakes to tidal rivers and bays, the waters of Virginia provide an endless source of exploration. Sammy Zambon, an avid paddler and visitor experience specialist for Virginia State Parks, introduces us to Wandering Waters Paddle Quest, a program that will have you exploring our state parks from a new perspective. Tranquil lakes and lazy stretches of river await via self-guided and ranger-led adventures. From serene sunsets to exciting river rapids, grab your paddle and hit the water at a Virginia State Park. Let's go. Virginia Outdoor Adventures is sponsored by the Virginia Association for Parks. VAFP champions parks across the Commonwealth. What's your favorite memory from a Virginia park? Help ensure that everyone can experience our parks for generations to come. Join VAFP today by clicking on Virginia Association for Parks in the show notes of your listening app. Sammy, welcome to Virginia Outdoor Adventures.
Thanks for having me.
What made you fall in love with paddling in Virginia?
I think it's the variety of the waters that we have here in Virginia. I started out paddling in northern New Jersey and southern New York when I was younger, but I moved here in 2000 and got my first taste of paddling on the tidal Potomac down at Westmoreland and just absolutely fell in love with it. It doesn't take you long to go anywhere in Virginia to get kind of a wide variety of experiences out on the water.
And how long have you been guiding for Virginia State Parks?
I started out in 2000 at Westmoreland, and I've been paddling there and a bunch of other parks over the last 24 years now.
What was your inspiration for creating the Wandering Waters Paddle Quest program?
So in 2019, we were starting to get ready for the 50th anniversary of the Virginia Scenic Rivers program. And Trail Quest had been around for a number of years at that point in time. And I came up with the idea of combining the two with this Wandering Waters Paddle Quest. Unfortunately, we wanted to roll it out in 2020, but of course, that was when COVID started, and it took us a number of years to get it out to the public.
Do you want to just briefly mention what Trail Quest is? Because I talk about it a lot on this podcast, but for anybody who maybe is listening to this episode, this is the first one, they might not know what Trail Quest is. So do you want to give a brief overview and how it's similar to Paddle Quest?
Sure. Both programs work quite similarly. Trail Quest is where you can go to one of our parks, go for a hike, and you can go to our adventures page, create an account, and log that you've done that visit. Paddle Quest works the same way, and over time, as you visit different numbers of parks, you get rewards.
So it's kind of like two different bucket list programs, but for state parks.
It is. It's actually two different opportunities to explore a park in very different ways.
Yeah, I was super excited when Paddle Quest launched because I completed Trail Quest in 2021. I think. I don't remember. I started in 2014. So it took me a little bit, but I love to visit the parks and actually spend time in each of the parks. I know some people, they'll hop from one park to the next, or they'll even do several parks in one day if they're close by. But I took my time, and it was one of the best things I ever did. I really, really enjoyed it. So to have this new opportunity to experience those parks again, but from a completely different perspective, was really exciting.
It is. And, sometimes it takes a while. It took me almost 15 years before I had made it to all of our state parks.
I'll bet, because there's a lot of parks and there's more being added all the time. When I finished Trail Quest, there were 39 parks. And how many are there now?
42.
Yeah, with more on the way from what I've been told. So what is the goal of Wandering Waters Paddle Quest, and what are you hoping that park visitors will take away from the experience?
So our goal for Wandering Waters is to get people out and exploring our parks, either on a stand-up paddleboard, in a kayak, or a canoe, and seeing our parks from a different perspective. You can go to a park like Hungry Mother and hike up to the top of Molly's Knob and get that giant panoramic scenic view. But then you can come back down and either rent a boat or bring your own and get out on the water and see that park from a whole other different view. You're much closer to the resource in some ways. Paddling allows you to sneak up on wildlife and get closer than you can when you're on foot. That's kind of one of the ways we wanted people to explore our parks, and one of the things we were hoping for. The other thing is when you're paddling, it takes off some of the wear and tear on your body that hiking might put on you, on your knees, on your back. Paddling is a little bit more freeing at times, and so it hopefully will open the door for an adventure to a whole other audience.
Yeah, that couldn't be more true. Although I will say, when you and I went paddling at Lake Anna the other day, my shoulders were screaming at me the next day. So I don't know about the wear and tear part. I'm used to kayaking. I haven't been in a canoe in years. And those are two completely different motions when you're paddling in a kayak versus a canoe. So I don't know, Sammy. I felt a little beat up after that trip.
Just got to remember, whether you're in a canoe or a kayak, all that power comes from your core, not from your arms.
Oh, so in other words, I was doing it wrong. You mentioned that there are 42 state parks, but not all of them offer paddling experiences. How many state parks actually do have paddling experiences?
We have 31 parks right now that are participating in the program. Not all of our parks have access to water that could be navigated by a paddlecraft.
Do park visitors need to bring their own paddling gear, or how does that work?
So there's 3 different ways you can participate. You can go on a ranger guided program where we're providing the canoes, kayaks, and all the gear that you need and take you out, which is a great opportunity because our rangers know the stories of the parks and they're able to give you that information. You can bring your own equipment in and go on a self-guided adventure, or if it's available at that particular park, you can actually go ahead and rent equipment from us. So that information's all available on the PaddleQuest website, and there's down towards the bottom, there's actually a chart that shows you which parks offer the different opportunities.
Yeah, that's a great resource. And I'm going to link that website in the show notes so that people can find it easily. Do you think that there's any advantages to ranger-led versus bringing your own?
There are some advantages of going with a ranger. Like I was saying, our interpreters are guides. They've been trained. Every year they go through a training class that's based on the American Canoe Association standards. They know the stories of the park. It's an excellent way for someone who maybe is just getting into paddle sports. They want to try it out, but they're not comfortable yet, to get out on the water in a safe environment.
I think sometimes people think that ranger-led programs are for newbies or beginners, but I really enjoy the ranger-led programs. I consider myself an experienced paddler, although you might not guess it after what I just said about how I wasn't paddling correctly in the canoe. But on my kayak, I do pretty well. And even though I love going out on my own, I also really enjoy the ranger-led programs for the reason that you just said. You learn so much more. And when you have somebody there who's interpreting, you're going to see things and experience things that you wouldn't have caught on your own. Like, for example, Mesa Neck is my home park and I paddle there by myself all the time. But when I went out on a ranger-led kayak program, the guide pointed out the fact that there was wild rice growing back in one of the coves. And I had never noticed that. For all the years that I had been paddling there, I didn't know what wild rice looked like, and I wouldn't have been able to pick it out. And when she mentioned that, I was like, oh my gosh, I had no idea. So you can learn things that you would not even know about if you were just doing it on your own.
Absolutely.
Have you ever longed to conquer the great outdoors but felt a need to brush up on outdoor skills? Unlock the secrets of Virginia's natural playground with Virginia State Park's Let's Go Adventures program. Let's Go Adventures features a series of programs led by expert rangers on camping, kayaking, hiking, fly fishing, orienteering, and archery, designed to instill confidence and ensure your time outside is as safe as it is unforgettable. The Let's Go Adventures programs are held year-round, giving you the chance to explore different parks and landscapes across Virginia. Gain the skills that will lead to a lifetime of independent exploration, lasting memories with family and friends, and a deep connection with nature. Learn more about Let's Go Adventures in episode 56 or by clicking on Let's Go Adventures in the show notes of your listening app. If someone chooses to paddle on their own, what safety tips should they follow?
Number one safety tip, if you're out there paddling, always wear a personal flotation device, otherwise known probably as a life jacket. That's number one for safety. Some of the other things, make sure that you're telling somebody where you're going and when you expect to be back. This way, if you get stuck out there, somebody knows when you're supposed to be back and they can start, looking for you if need be. The other big thing is knowing what your limits are, making sure that you're paddling in conditions that match up to those limits. I've been paddling canoes for over 40 years and kayaks for over 20, but I am primarily a flat water paddler and a little bit of light river. And so anything above classification of like a class 3 rapid, I am not comfortable in that. And I try to avoid those unless I'm going with someone who's much more experienced that can help me scat out the route and make sure that I'm doing things in a safe manner.
I've had a couple of experiences where I've learned the hard way. For me, I've learned that I always check in with a ranger and I let them tell me, are the water conditions safe, especially when you're in the tidal area. Like, I feel like that's especially important because I'm very bad at understanding the tides when they're coming in, when they're going out. And that's almost always when I've gotten myself into, a bit of a situation where the tide or the currents start carrying me away, and I have completely underestimated how powerful those can be. So yeah, I always check in with the ranger now so I don't make that mistake again.
Yeah, I've done the same thing in tidal water. The other one I've done is gotten myself stuck on a mud flat when the tide's gone out and there's not been enough water.
Yeah. So how do visitors participate in Wandering Waters Paddle Quest? What do they need to do to register?
So they can go to our website. If they just go ahead and search for Virginia State Parks Wandering Waters Paddle Quest, that'll bring them to the website. And there is a link to register for the program. And it's just some basic information that'll create an account for them. That account works not only for the Wandering Waters Paddle Quest, but also for Trail Quest and our geocaching program. That one account covers all three. And so then they can, once they've done that registration, or they can do that after their first adventure, then they can look on our events page to see when there's some ranger guided programs going on, or if they've got their own equipment and want to do that, then they can go ahead and start heading out to parks. But they should make sure that they're doing that at the safe time of year. Water is just warming up enough to make it comfortable.
Sammy, I've heard from some of the rangers that State Parks has a bit of a formula to help you know when it's warm enough to go out on the water. It's like a combination of water temperature and air temperature, right?
It is. We basically follow the guideline of 120. The air temperature and the water temperature, they need to add up to 120 degrees, and the water temperature needs to be above 60. Otherwise, a paddler who comes out of their boat and ends up in the water, if the water temperature is below 60, they're at risk of cold water shock. If anybody's ever done the cold water challenge where they've dunked their head in icy water, your body's reaction is to gasp. And if you've fallen out of your boat and your head's underwater, when that reaction to gasp happens, you've got some problems.
Will every park be able to inform visitors about whether or not they've reached that 120 limit and it's safe to go out on the water?
Most parks should be able to do that. You can go ahead and call and see if they've got a water temperature for that day. For a lot of the rivers, you can go ahead and check. A lot of the gauges on the rivers have temperature as well, so you can get an idea what that temperature is like. In most of Virginia, it's about this time of year that water is starting to warm up, and you don't need specialized gear for cold water. Later on in the fall, water is usually a warmer temperature, but then you start running into the air temperature cooling off.
Do you have any other advice for visitors before they arrive at a park?
If you're looking to rent equipment from our parks and it's listed on our website as a park that offers it, go ahead and call the park before you come out to make sure that it's going to be available on the day that you're coming out to visit. This way, sometimes we don't have staff for that particular day, or the water's not warmed up, and so they're not offering rentals at that time.
Sammy, what do participants receive for participating in Paddle Quest?
So we've got a variety of prizes that go along with this. At 5 parks, you get a sticker. At 10 parks, there's a patch that goes with it. At 20 parks, you get a mesh gear bag. And then when you hit all 31 that are participating, you get a cell phone dry bag and you get a master paddler certificate.
Oh, is that kind of like the master hiker certificate for Trail Quest?
It is.
Do you get that from a ranger at a park of your choice?
It is. We haven't had anybody hit all 31 yet. So.
Oh, man. I think maybe I should make that a goal of mine. See if I can't be one of the first.
That sounds like a pretty good goal.
I mean, I'm getting there. Out of the 31 parks, I've done 15 and I'm doing one more in the next couple of weeks. So I'm at the halfway point.
So I spend a lot of time training our staff that guide our public programs. And despite the number of years that I've been paddling here in Virginia, I still have 7 that I still haven't made it to.
Well, I think this is a good transition point for us to talk about some of the specific parks and the paddling experiences in them. You want to do that with me?
Sure, that sounds like a great idea.
Yeah, sounds like fun. And I'm just going to go ahead and tell you how nerdy I am. I actually went to the Virginia State Parks Wandering Waters Paddle Quest website and I copied and pasted the chart that's on there where they list all the parks that paddling is available and the categories of ranger-led or rental equipment or bring your own equipment. And I copied and pasted it into my own Excel doc and I'm checking off the parks as I go along. So I've got my little list open here and I'm super excited to talk about some of these because I've had some really, really nice paddling experiences in our state parks and I would love to share them. Sammy, do you have any favorite parks for paddling?
Well, I'm not supposed to be biased, but I spent 9 years at Caledon State Park and that's probably one of my favorite. It's on the tidal Potomac in King George County and it's going to be one of the harder ones for participants to get to because there's limited access there. And so really the best way to participate in that is through a ranger guided program. That park has some of the best sunsets as the sun is setting down into the Potomac and it sets up just a beautiful view.
Those must be pretty epic because I've heard staff talking about the ranger-led sunset paddles at Caledon. I haven't done one yet, but I was looking at it at the end of last season and I couldn't make it before the weather got too cold, but I definitely want to do that this year because everybody talks about it and it sounds like it's gorgeous. Did you know that you can become a member of Virginia Outdoor Adventures? For the same price as a cup of coffee once a month, you can receive a Virginia Outdoor Adventures membership while supporting the show. Members have access to the complete list of links and resources from each episode. Members also receive Virginia Outdoor Adventures vinyl stickers and a shout out on the show. If you're enjoying this podcast, please consider supporting me. Hit pause on your podcast player, go to your show notes, and click on Buy Me a Coffee, where you can buy me a virtual coffee or sign up for a membership. My sincerest gratitude for the newest members of Virginia Outdoor Adventures. Kelly from Broadway, Jacob from Warsaw, Laura from Ocean Pines, Glenn and Susanna from Bent Mountain, Tim from Palmyra, Stacy from Lynchburg, Mary from Bristow, Kevin from Henrico, John from Alexandria, Angela from Williamsburg, and Karen from Broadlands. Thank you so much for your support. I really enjoyed Machicomico, which is one of our newest Virginia state parks. Machicomico is on the York River, and I did a sunset paddle there, and that was also stunning. When you're actually on the water, you can look down into the water and see the oysters and see the crabs moving around. And even as you're paddling into some of the inlets, if the water level's low, like if the tide is out, you see the oysters poking up around the marsh grass, and it's just so beautiful.
Yeah, it's really beautiful there. And with Caledon, if the tide's right, you can go up into the marsh and you're paddling all the way up to an area where there's a beaver dam that goes across the head of the marsh that actually is an old roadway that fed into a mill. Over the years, there's been, erosion that's poked holes in that old roadway, and the beavers have patched it. And so you get up there to see this big combination of man-made and beaver-made dam that separates the upper wetland from the tidal section of the wetland. It just creates a neat environment for paddling.
Yes. Belle Isle is another one of my favorites. That's a really beautiful park. And I feel like if you're going to go to Belle Isle, you want to get on the water. It's on the Rappahannock. The park is sort of on a peninsula and it's surrounded by water on every side. And there's just so many interesting paddling opportunities because you can get back into the marsh and see a lot of wildlife where the water is really still. It's very peaceful and quiet. Or you can go out on the open water, which, requires a little more planning and just making sure that the water conditions are okay, that you can navigate on your own if you're out there by yourself. But then you have like nesting ospreys out on the open water, and it's very different experiences all in one park.
Yeah, actually, Belle Isle was the first park I actually went paddling with when I moved here in 2000. My wife and I went down there on a really windy day and took out a canoe where we struggled quite a bit.
Yeah, I mean, we all have those stories, right? Like in the beginning when we're first learning, I feel like everybody has some stories of struggle. Yeah, those are some of my favorite. And Westmoreland is a park that's coming up for me. I haven't done it yet, but in the next couple of weeks, the Virginia Association for Parks has their annual conference at Westmoreland. So I'm super excited to go paddling there because those huge sand cliffs that are right on the Potomac, those like glow in the sunset. And so I'm really excited to do some paddling there. I've seen people paddling and I've always been like at the top of the cliff looking down going, I need to do that one of these days. And it's actually coming up. So I'm really excited.
Yeah, I started guiding trips at that park, and it's another one of my favorites. I've really started more in this recent years of doing a little bit more with our river parks. And so, one of my favorites is over at James River. They've got 2 landings in the park. And so you can go from the canoe landing and go downstream all the way down to, I believe it's called Dixon Landing. Mm-hmm. And it's about a 2-mile paddle, and you've got some unclassified rapids in there. So it gives you a little bit of a thrill, but it's easy enough that, they do some tubing there. But one of the cool things is on the far bank of the river, across from the park, they've got a creek that comes in under what is now railroad tracks, but the bridge that you see that carries that railroad track actually used to be an aqueduct that carried the James River Canal across that creek. And so you've got this old stonework that's visible, and you've got that great history that ties in there. And it's just kind of a real fun setting to go and paddle on.
Yeah, rivers are different because they're moving. So it's a completely different experience than if you're on like one of the lakes where the water's not moving. James River's a fun one because, they put you in and then you paddle 2 miles down where there's a pull out or a takeout. And then Shenandoah River is kind of similar too. Like, you go in up the river and then paddle your way back to the park. It can require a little bit of coordination, I feel like, especially if you're doing it on your own. If you're doing a ranger-led program, you don't have to think about any of these logistics. But if you're on your own, sometimes it means having 2 cars where one is, parked where you're going to pull out and the other one takes you to where you're going to put in. And then that way you have transportation back and forth between the 2.
One of the other things you have to consider is what the river levels are on those parks. So sometimes it's best to check with the ranger to make sure that the river is at a safe level. And sometimes places like Shenandoah River during the summer months, if we are having a really dry summer, the water level gets a little hard for paddling. You've got to really pick where you paddle, otherwise the rocks are exposed.
Discover river life in the charming, picturesque towns of Middlesex County in the heart of Virginia's river realm. The moment I arrived in Middlesex, I was swept into the river lifestyle. The highlights of my relaxing visit were trying my luck at casting a line and topping, holding on to my hat on a charter boat ride in Deltaville, and paddling into the sunset in Urbana. Whether you prefer waterfront camping or chic lodging, Middlesex County has something for everyone. I enjoyed the mix of vintage and modern furnishings and luxurious amenities of the Chesapeake Inn in Urbana. Dining options abound in Middlesex. Family-owned local establishments are the heart of Middlesex communities. I recommend the Mediterranean coastal cuisine of Prime Mediterranean and the raw oysters and waterfront dining of Marar in Topping, plus the chill vibe of fire pits and food truck at Small Town Burger in Urbana. Don't miss the annual Urbana Oyster Festival this November 1st and 2nd. With food, live music, local vendors, and of course, lots of oysters, this is an event you'll want to experience for yourself. Planning a trip to Middlesex County is easy with the new Explore Middlesex app. I used the app to choose the dining, lodging, attractions, and outdoor adventures I wanted to experience and added them to my plan. Info, location, and directions were right at my fingertips each step of my visit. Learn more about Middlesex County in episode 58, or click on Explore Middlesex in your show notes to download the app and start planning your river trip today. So let's talk about some of these lake parks. Have you done Bear Creek Lake?
I have. I teach a class there almost every year.
Yeah, I really enjoy that one, especially if you're camping there, because some of the campsites are right on the water. Like I've actually just put my kayak in on the water right next to my campsite and then come back out and I'm right there at my campsite. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that.
No, and it's one of the ones, the last time I paddled there, we had a beaver that kept paddling, swimming around our group. And every once in a while it'd slap its tail and go under. So it was a real cool experience.
Bear Creek Lake is kind of known for their beaver population. And I saw an otter there last time I was camping too. It was on the opposite bank. And it's one of those things where you don't see it very often. So when you see it, you're like, wait, is that what I think it is? And it's kind of hard to mistake something that's really long and slinky and sort of running up and down the bank. But yeah, I saw otters too. That was a treat.
Yeah, I still haven't seen an otter on one of our lakes, but I did get to see mink at Lake Anna about 2 years ago.
Oh, you were telling me about that when we were paddling at Lake Anna. That is really a treat. I have never seen a mink.
Yeah, they're kind of similar, just much smaller than the otters.
Wow, that is so cool. I mean, how excited were you when you saw a mink?
I was super excited. I was only about 15, 20 feet away from it when I spotted it.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Before you mentioned that paddling provides an opportunity to get up close to wildlife in a way that you don't when you're walking on the trail. And I think some of my best wildlife encounters have happened when I've been paddling in state parks. Like when I think about beavers and otters and muskrats, but also like turtles. And then I've just seen like so many different birds, everything from osprey to eagles and even belted kingfishers. And when you and I were paddling at Lake Anna, gosh, how many belted kingfishers did we see?
Oh, 4 or 5 at least. And, if you're looking in the right spot, you can sometimes find where they're nesting in the bank and they come in and out. So it's kind of really cool. Last year, paddling at, I was down at Pocahontas. We were able to sneak up on a prothonotary warbler, which is a really pretty bright yellow songbird. But we were able to get within about 10 feet of one that was perching in a bush right along the side of the creek. One of my other favorites over the last couple of years has become the New River down at New River Trail. We do a couple of paddles there, and I help out with one of our adventure races, the New River Trail Challenge. And we do a long paddle. It's 12.1 miles from Foster Falls down to, I think, the Allisonia takeout. That is really kind of a neat paddle because you've got some ridges that go all the way across the river that creates some really neat water features. It's really quite a bit of a challenge.
I've not done that one, but I saw a picture of you paddling at New River Trail and these huge cliffs that you're like paddling next to. Like, how cool is that?
It is. It's a gorgeous river feature. And that one's actually upstream from the Foster Falls area of the park. It's just neat that you get to see that geography there. You get to paddle under some of the old trestles that carry the railroad through the valley. It's just a fantastic paddle.
There's a campground there too at Foster Falls. And I know that they do some ranger led programs there. So I think next time I'm in the area, I need to sign myself up for one of those.
Yep. Or you can maybe try out one of our Let's Go adventures.
Oh, yeah. Let's go. You know, I'm signed up for Let's Go Adventures at Pocahontas coming up in a couple of months. And I just interviewed Diego and Sarah on another episode. I think it's episode 56, where we talked about Let's Go kayaking. And what a great opportunity for folks who want to learn to do all of this paddling on their own and gain some confidence in the skills to be able to go out on the water on their own.
Yeah, that Let's Go paddling. We follow the American Canoe Association's. We follow their training guidelines for that. So it's a great opportunity for someone who wants to get into kayaking but hasn't had a class or has just bought some new equipment and wants to learn to see what they're doing and wants to be safe. Probably one of the best skills you can learn out there, and one of the most important, is the art of self-rescue. Just in case you fall out of your boat, how are you going to get back in? And so these Let's Go programs that we're offering, they're introductory level programs, and they include about 6 to 8 hours of practical training.
That's what I'm so excited about, is that these are like real courses. It's not like a ranger-led guided program. This is like actual instructional course. And the one that I signed up for is 2 days in a row. They're like back to back.
Yep, we're offering them down at Pocahontas. Some of those are going to be 2 days, 4 hours each day, and that was so that we could offer them in the evening, so that somebody could get out of work a little bit early and come down and try that out and not tie up a whole weekend. So they could maybe come down there, do those 2 days, and then come back and spend part of their weekend out on the water trying out those new skills.
I think I should put a link to Sarah and Diego's episode on Let's Go Adventures in the show notes of this episode. And then I just wanted to say, I think one of the other benefits of a ranger-led guided program is sometimes you get to go out on the water when you wouldn't be able to go on your own. I mean, we did mention that some of these parks, the access is a little bit difficult, and so you would have to do it with a ranger-led program. But I also think about my park, Mason Neck. That park usually closes at sunset, but they do sunset paddles and they do even full moon paddles on occasion. And normally you would not be able to do that because the park closes. But when they have those ranger-led guided programs, it gives you an opportunity to get out on the water when you wouldn't otherwise be able to.
Yep, and it's such a unique experience. Mason Neck is another one of those great places where, because of the way the park is on the east side of the bay there, you get a beautiful sunset. And if you're out there for the full moon, you're coming back by moonlight, and it's awesome.
Sammy, thank you so much for being a guest on Virginia Outdoor Adventures and sharing information about the Wandering Waters Paddle Quest program. How can listeners connect with you?
So if anybody's got questions about this, you can go ahead and contact me at my email. It's sammy.zambon, that's ZAMBON, @dcr.virginia.gov.
Excellent. I will add that to the show notes along with the links to the web pages. Sammy, this has been really fun. I love talking about paddling. I love talking about state parks. What a great opportunity to talk about both. And I hope to see you out on the water.
Thank you.
Adventure on. That's a wrap on the 4th season of Virginia Outdoor Adventures. But don't worry, I'm not going anywhere. There will be plenty of new content on social media, so be sure to follow along on Instagram and Facebook. Don't miss the launch of Season 5. Hit the follow button in your podcast listening app and subscribe to my newsletter at virginiaoutdooradventures.com. Got ideas for the new season? I'd be happy to hear your recommendations for topics to cover, places to visit, new guests, and your favorite adventure towns. Virginia Outdoor Adventures is over 60 episodes strong and counting. Thank you so much for supporting me and this podcast. Getting to know my listeners and meeting so many wonderful people who love Virginia as much as I do has been the best part of hosting this show. Support the podcast by sharing your favorite episode with a friend or sign up for a membership on Buy Me a Coffee. I'm proud to say that this podcast has promoted hundreds of small local businesses, nonprofits, towns, cities, and counties, tourism and economic development, public land agencies, parks, and homegrown brands right here in Virginia. If you know of a local business or brand who would like to advertise or partner with Virginia Outdoor Adventures, please share this podcast with them or reach out to me by email or DM. Check the show notes for my email address and links to all the social platforms. I'll see you in Season 5. Until next time, adventure on.